The stranger was in his kitchen, and Jack Thornton's hand went to his gun before his mind caught up with his eyes. Dawn light spilled through the window onto a woman kneading dough at his table, flour dusting her worn calico sleeves. Dark hair pinned back with care. His daughter Emma sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, watching with the kind of wonder he hadn't seen in 2 years. The house smelled like bread. Jack's throat tightened. He hadn't smelled bread baking since Mary died. "Who let you in?" His voice came out harder than he meant. The woman didn't flinch. She met his eyes calm, dark, unafraid. "Your daughter was hungry, Mr. Thornton. I was passing through, saw smoke from your chimney, but no life in the windows." Emma scrambled to her feet. "Papa, she makes real bread, not just hardtack." Jack looked at his child, 8 years old, rail thin, wearing a dress 2 sizes too small. He'd been trying. God knows he'd been trying. But running the ranch alone, keeping her fed and safe through a Montana winter. There were only so many hours in a day. "Passing through to where?" he asked. "Anywhere that'll have me." The woman shaped the dough with practiced hands. "Lost my husband and son on the wagon train. Burned out near Sweetwater. I've got nothing but what I'm wearing and what I know how to do." Her voice was steady, but Jack recognized the particular emptiness in her eyes. He'd seen it in his own mirror every morning. Emma tugged his sleeve. "Can she stay?" "Papa." "Just for a little while." The woman, he didn't even know her name yet, set the dough to rise and wiped her hands on her apron. "I don't mean to intrude, Mr. Thornton. I can work for my keep. Cook. Clean. Mend. I'll sleep in the barn if you got one. Just until the snow melts and the pass opens." Jack looked at the bread dough, at his daughter's hopeful face, at the kitchen that had been cold and joyless since Mary's burial. "Name's Grace," the woman added quietly. "Grace Calloway." He should say no. The town would talk. But Emma was smiling. "Barnloft?" he said finally. 2 weeks. "We'll see." Grace Calloway transformed the Thornton house in 3 days. She didn't ask permission. Just moved through the space like water finding its level. Mended curtains that had hung torn for months. Scrubbed the stove until it gleamed. Baked not just bread but pies, apple. Dried cherry. Whatever she could coax from Jack's meager pantry. Emma followed her everywhere, chattering like a magpie. Grace answered every question with patience. Showed the girl how to knead dough. How to darn socks. How to braid her own hair properly. Jack watched from the doorway, coffee cup in hand, trying to ignore how right it felt. On the 4th day, he rode into town for supplies. The postmaster's wife, Mrs. Henley, cornered him at the counter. "Heard you took in that widow from the burned wagon train?" Her smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Mighty fast, Jack. With your Mary barely cold in the ground." Jack's jaw tightened. Woman needed help. Christian thing to do. "Oh!" "I'm sure." Mrs. Henley's eyes glittered. "Just surprising, is all. Single woman under your roof. People will wonder about propriety." He paid for his flour and bacon without another word. But her insinuation followed him home like a shadow. That evening, Grace served venison stew rich and perfect. The meat fall apart tender. Emma ate 2 bowls and fell asleep at the table. Something like peace on her small face. "I can go," Grace said quietly. "Washing dishes? If people are talking." "People always talk." Jack lifted Emma into his arms. "Don't mean they're right." But that night, lying in his cold bed, he thought about what Mrs. Henley implied. Grace was beautiful in a quiet way, strong shoulders, capable hands, eyes that held both sorrow and steel. He hadn't looked at a woman since Mary. Hadn't wanted to. Now he couldn't stop noticing. The next morning, a blizzard rolled down from the mountains. Snow fell thick and fast, erasing the horizon. Grace couldn't leave now even if she wanted to. They were sealed in together. The blizzard lasted 5 days. Jack chopped wood. Grace cooked. Emma played with corn husk dolls Grace fashioned from scraps. The house stayed warm, the stove well fed, meals appearing at regular hours like clockwork. It felt like a family. That terrified Jack more than any storm. On the third night, Emma asked Grace about her husband. His name was Thomas. Grace's hands never stopped peeling potatoes. Good man. Gentle. We had a son, Samuel, 4 years old. What happened to them? Emma's voice was small. Fever took them both within a week. Grace's knife moved steadily. On the trail, no doctor, no medicine. I held Samuel while he burned, and there was nothing I could do. Jack, pretending to read by the fire, felt the words like a punch to the gut. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. Grace smiled, sad but genuine. Me too, sweetheart. But we honor them by living, by being kind, by not letting grief turn us cruel. Later, after Emma slept, Jack and Grace sat across from each other at the table. The wind howled outside. Mary died in childbirth, he said suddenly. 2 years ago, her and the baby both. I couldn't save them. Grace nodded. Emma told me she misses her mother. I got Mary pregnant again, even though the first birth nearly killed her. Then I couldn't ride fast enough for the doctor. Jack's voice cracked. I killed them both. No. Grace's voice was firm. Death came. That's all. You didn't will it. You didn't cause it. You just lived through it. Doesn't feel that way. I know. Grace's eyes held his. But your daughter needs you alive, Jack. Not buried with your guilt. The blizzard screamed against the walls. Inside, the fire crackled warm. Something shifted between them, not romance. Not yet. But recognition. 2 people who'd walked through the same dark valley and somehow survived. Thank you, Jack said, for staying. Grace's smile was soft. Your daughter makes it easy. When the blizzard finally broke, the world was white and silent. Jack worked from dawn to dusk digging out the barn, feeding cattle, breaking ice in the water troughs. Grace kept the house running like a well-oiled machine. Emma bloomed under her care, gaining weight, laughing more. The 3 of them fell into rhythms. Grace mended Jack's coat without being asked. He built her a better bed in the barn loft, insulated against the cold. Emma set the table each night, proud of her small responsibility. They didn't talk about Grace leaving. The snow was still too deep. The pass still closed. But Jack stopped mentioning it was temporary. Then Deacon Ferris came. He arrived on horseback, thin-lipped and righteous, supposedly checking on Emma's welfare. His eyes lingered on Grace with open suspicion. Mr. Thornton? He didn't dismount. I've heard concerning reports about your household arrangements. Jack crossed his arms. From Mrs. Henley. I'd guess from concerned members of the community. A single woman living under your roof, it's improper. Think of your daughter's moral education. Grace appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. She said nothing, but her presence spoke volumes. Miss Calloway works for room and board, Jack said evenly, until the pass opens. Nothing improper about honest labor. The appearance matters. Thornton, a man in your position. My position is trying to keep my daughter alive through winter. Grace has been nothing but honorable. If folks want to think otherwise, that's their sin, not ours. Deacon Ferris's jaw tightened. The town council may need to discuss this. He rode away, back stiff with disapproval. Grace closed the door softly. I should go. Not yet. Jack surprised himself with his vehemence. Snow's still too deep. Besides, Emma needs you. What he couldn't say, I need you too. That night, wolves came. Jack heard them first, the eerie howls circling the livestock. He grabbed his rifle, but Grace was already at the door, coat on, lantern lit. I know animals, she said simply. Together they drove the pack back, Grace fearless, her voice commanding. The wolves scattered. The cattle were safe, standing in the snow, breath clouding the air. Jack saw her clearly. Not fragile, not weak. Frontier strong. A survivor. You're full of surprises, he said. Grace smiled. So are you 3 weeks after the blizzard? Emma woke with fever. Grace felt the girl's forehead and went pale. It's bad. Jack had already lost a wife and son. The terror that gripped him was primal. Absolute. I'll ride for the doctor. Snow's too deep. He won't make it in time. Grace's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. We fight it here. For 3 days and nights. Grace barely slept. She brewed willow bark tea, bathed Emma in cool water when the fever spiked, sang lullabies in a language Jack didn't recognize. He chopped wood, boiled water, prayed to a god he'd stopped believing in. On the 3rd night, Emma's fever broke. Jack, slumped in a chair by the bed, woke to find Grace asleep on the floor, one hand still holding Emma's. He lifted Grace carefully, carried her to the sofa, covered her with a quilt. She'd saved his daughter's life. When Grace woke, Jack had coffee ready. I don't know what we'd do without you, he said quietly. Grace's eyes were red-rimmed but clear. Every child I help is a prayer for the one I lost. Samuel died because I couldn't save him. Didn't know how. If I can keep another mother from feeling that. Her voice broke. Jack did something he hadn't done since Mary died. He reached out, took Grace's hand, held it. You're a good woman. Grace Calloway. You're a good man. Jack Thornton. That afternoon, Jack took her to Mary's grave, a simple marker under a cottonwood tree. She would have liked you, he said. Mary. She had a big heart. Grace placed wildflowers on the snow. She made you a good man. I see her kindness in Emma. I loved her. Jack's voice was rough. Still do. Love doesn't die just because people do. Grace's hand found his again. It changes shape, becomes memory, becomes gratitude, makes room for new things without erasing what was. Jack looked at this woman who understood grief's architecture. I'm scared, he admitted. Of what? Of forgetting her. Of betraying her memory? Living isn't betrayal. Jack. Grace's eyes held his. It's the bravest thing we do. The town council summoned Jack in early March. He rode into town under gray skies, knowing what was coming. Deacon Ferris, Mrs. Henley, and 3 others sat behind a table in the church basement. Faces grave. Mr. Thornton. Deacon Ferris folded his hands. We need to discuss your household situation. Jack said nothing. Mrs. Henley leaned forward. That woman, Miss Calloway, has been under your roof for nearly 2 months. Unchaperoned. It's scandalous. She's a housekeeper. Jack said flatly. Who sleeps in your barn? Who tends your daughter without oversight? We've heard reports. What reports? Jack's voice hardened. That you're overly familiar. That the child calls her by her Christian name. That there's impropriety. There's nothing improper. Grace is. That's the problem. Thornton. Deacon Ferris's voice was cold. You defend her too quickly. Care for her too openly. For Emma's sake. For her moral education, this woman must leave. Or we'll petition for guardianship. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jack's mind reeled. They'd take Emma. His own daughter. Give us your word. She'll be gone by week's end. Mrs. Henley said. And we'll say no more. Jack thought of Emma's laughter. Grace's steady presence. The warmth that had returned to his home. He thought of the town's judgment. I'll handle it, he said quietly. The council nodded, satisfied. Jack rode home through cold rain, hating himself. Grace saw it in his face when he walked in. What happened? They want you gone. The words tasted like ash, threatening to take Emma if you stay. Grace's face went still. I see. Grace. I? No. Her voice was steady. I won't be the reason you lose your daughter. I'll leave. She went to pack. Emma, playing by the fire, looked up. Where's Miss Grace going? Jack couldn't answer. That night, Emma cried herself to sleep. Grace's bag sat by the door. Jack sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from him. He'd chosen safety over courage, the town's approval over his heart. It felt like dying again. Grace planned to leave on the morning stage. Emma wouldn't speak to Jack, wouldn't look at him. She sat on the porch in the cold, silent tears tracking her face. The house was already dead again. No bread baking, no humming, just emptiness and the ghost of warmth. Jack worked mechanically feeding animals, chopping wood. Everything felt hollow. That evening, he rode to Mary's grave. He knelt in the mud, hut in hands. I don't know what to do. Mary. They'll take Emma if Grace stays. But Emma's breaking without her. And I. His voice cracked. He'd loved Mary with everything he had. Her death had nearly killed him. But Grace had brought him back to life. I'm scared of forgetting you, he whispered to the headstone. Scared of loving again. Scared it means you didn't matter. The wind moved through bare branches. Somewhere, a meadowlark sang early, hopeful, and Jack heard Mary's voice in his memory. Clear as day. You're letting fear bear you twice. Jack Thornton, that woman loves our daughter. Are you too scared to love her back? He sat in the mud a long time. When he returned home, Emma was still on the porch. She finally looked at him, eyes red. Mama wouldn't want us sad forever. Papa! Jack's throat closed. Miss Grace makes us happy, Emma whispered. Isn't that what Mama would want? For us to be happy, out of the mouths of babes. Jack knelt beside his daughter. You're right, sweetheart. You're absolutely right. Then don't let her go. Jack looked toward the barn where Grace's lamp still burned. Courage wasn't avoiding pain, it was choosing life despite it. I won't, he promised. He saddled his horse in the dark and rode for town. The morning stage to Billings left at 8. Grace sat on the bench outside the depot, carpetbag at her feet, face composed. A small crowd gathered: farmers, ranch hands, townspeople waiting for mail. Mrs. Henley watched from across the street, satisfied. Then hoofbeats thundered down Main Street. Jack Thornton reined in hard, dismounted before his horse fully stopped. His eyes found Grace. Don't get on that stage. Grace stood slowly. Jack, we talked about this. No. I made a coward's choice. He turned to face the crowd, voice carrying. You want to judge her? Judge me. Grace Calloway saved my daughter's life. She brought light back into a house that was dying. She asks for nothing and gives everything. Mrs. Henley stepped forward. Mr. Thornton, this is unseemly. What's unseemly is good people turning cruel because they're bored. Jack's voice was steel. Grace is the finest woman I have known besides my wife. If loving her is scandal, then your God and mine are different. Silence fell over Main Street. Grace Calloway stays, Jack said. As my family, anyone got a problem with that? Take it up with me. An older rancher stepped forward. Tom Wheeler. Respected. Weathered? Thornton's right. We've been small and mean. Miss Grace, you got my apology. One by one, other voices joined. Not all Mrs. Henley turned on her heel. Deacon Ferris's face darkened, but enough. Grace's eyes glistened. Jack, you don't have to. I do. He moved closer, voice dropping. Not out of duty. Because Emma's right. You make us happy. You make me want to live again. And Mary would want me to choose life. To choose you. His hand found hers. If you'll have us. Grace looked at this man who'd found courage in grief's shadow. Yes, she whispered. A small commotion, Emma ran from where she'd hidden behind the mercantile, threw herself at Grace's waist. "You're staying." Grace laughed, crying, holding the child tight. Jack's arms came around them both. The stage left without her. Spring came to Montana like a promise kept. The snow melted, revealing brown earth that would soon green. Meadowlarks returned, their songs bright in the warming air. The pass opened, but Grace didn't leave. She stayed. Not as housekeeper, not as guest, as family. Jack courted her properly, wildflowers left on the table. Evening walks after Emma slept. Shy conversations about future. Grace blushed like a girl, laughed more easily, let herself hope. In April, they planted a garden together, all three of them. Hands in the dark soil. Beans, carrots, potatoes. Emma chattered about what they'd grow, already planning preserves and pies. Mary's grave stood nearby under the cottonwood, marked and honored, but not a shrine. Not anymore. Grace had placed perennials there, flowers that would return each spring. Faithful as memory. "She's part of this," Grace had said when Jack questioned it. "Always will be. Love doesn't erase love. It builds on it." One evening in early May, they sat on the porch, Jack, Grace, and Emma between them. The sunset painted the sky gold and rose. Somewhere, cattle lowed. The garden sprouted green. Emma held both their hands, swinging them gently. "Are you happy now, Papa?" Jack looked at his daughter, at Grace, whose smile was soft and certain, at the home they'd built from grief and courage. "Yes, sweetheart, I am." Grace's head rested briefly on his shoulder. Inside, bread was rising for tomorrow. The stove burned warm. The house lived again. Some folks said love came easy, but Jack knew better. The truest kind came the hard way, through loss, through fear, through the simple courage to let someone make your house happy again. Emma's voice drifted up, drowsy and content. "I knew she should stay, Papa. I knew it from the bread." Jack smiled, held them both a little closer. The kitchen light glowed warm behind them, and the spring evenings settled soft around their rebuilt home.